everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Bryony and I'm one half of the Indecisive Readers. Today I'm here to bring you my February wrap up. In February I read 7 books, I listened to 3 audiobooks, I read 2 physical books and apparently only 2 ebooks, which doesn't seem right, but I can't work out where I'm not remembering a book. I read a total of 3,035 pages and my average rating was 3.21 stars. I enjoyed all but one book that I read, and the book I didn't enjoy I'm kind of disappointed by, so I may start with that one just so we can get the bad out of the way first. So controversially, the book I didn't enjoy in February was The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This just wasn't what I was expecting. I don't normally like dark academia, so maybe I shouldn't have expected to like this. However, this sounded more fantasy than dark academia, and to me it felt like we didn't get any of that fantasy. We also didn't get much, I feel like, of the promise of history and this great Alexandrian society that we were expected to. Also, I just didn't really care for the characters. They felt like literary fiction characters stuck in a fantasy book. They were just very pretentious. Maybe they represent academics like accurately, but I just found it very difficult to read. Nothing really happened. The writing was really small, so it just made it really difficult to read. I felt like I was confused the whole way, so I couldn't work out whether I was just stupid or whether the book just made it really inaccessible. In theory, I like that magic was treated as a science, but I don't think it needed to make me feel like I needed a degree to read it. Therefore, I rated it 2 stars. I do have a written review as well as a video review. I will link both down below if you want to read more on my thoughts. Then I'm just going to mention this one briefly because it was a reread, so I have already reviewed it, and that is Legendborn by Tracy Dion. I was actually listening to the audiobook so I can reread and annotate this before the sequel comes out. I really enjoyed it once again. I was surprised by how slow it was. I do remember when I read it feeling not slumpy, but feeling like it was taking me forever to get through it, and so I was actually quite surprised that when I did reread it, it did still feel quite slow. However, I still really enjoyed it, and the reason I rated it so highly was because I kept thinking back to it, and I feel like rereading it a couple of times, being super excited for the sequel, is probably still a good recommendation. It's really cleverly done. It's one of those books that grows on you with a reread, so I've actually got a book about Arthurian legends, or possibly even an original Arthurian legend kind of collection, just so I can maybe read some of that before I do my reread of this, and then that means I might understand some more of the lore and the references that are in this when I read it next time. I also read Undercover Princess by Connie Glynn. I read this for a blog tour and I'm really glad I picked it up because it was just what I needed after I've stuck reading the Atlas 6. I was feeling a bit slumpy and I just didn't want to read another dense fantasy. So this was quite good as a easy teen/middle grade read. I really enjoyed the setting in this as well as the characters. I liked the hints of maybe an LGBT+ romance. Looking forward to seeing that develop more in future books, she says, having read the final book. I don't think it's necessarily an outstanding book. There were some issues with it. I just don't think it was necessarily perfectly written, but it worked perfectly for what I needed, and so I rated it 3.5 stars. I also read A Legacy of Stillman Starlight, which I also rated 3 stars. I don't think I was in the right frame of mind to read this when I did, because I jumped straight into reading this after the Atlas 6, which had made me a bit slumpy, and I was kind of not forcing myself to read it, but because the publication date was coming up, I was like, no, you need to read this now, and so I maybe pushed myself to read it when I wasn't quite in the mood for it, which maybe affected my rating. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, but I still found it a really fun book. I thought the main character was really interesting. I liked her determination and her fight. I thought the world was quite interesting, and there was like a secret that we felt like we were constantly chasing in the first book, but we didn't get the answer, so I'm sure that will be something that is explored more in the sequels, and I'm looking forward to finding out what that is. I also read Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sulin Tan. I really enjoyed this. I love the main character. Xingyin was just like really quite fierce. I really enjoyed the kind of society in this. Also, it's just really nice to see her treated as a person rather than just a good woman. I think she was really fierce. I loved her relationships with the 2 love interest. I really enjoyed the world building. I think it was really rich. I loved all the mythological references, and yeah, definitely looking forward to coming back to this. I also read the audiobook, so would recommend that. Then kind of technically my final book for February is The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary. I finally got around to reading this. This was one of my 20 books to read in 2022. And I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. Again, it was just a soft, easy read. I think I was reading this kind of along the same time as the Atlas 6, so I needed something less intense to read alongside something that was draining me. This felt like kind of like Mamma Mia in a book. Like, it's a road trip, it's a romance, it's like a rom-com. The narrative is split in two. It's split in the present day where they're on a road trip that goes wrong so much. I didn't realise how many like twists there could be in a road trip. It's literally just up to Scotland. There were so many things that went wrong. I didn't enjoy the past as much, just because I think the relationship between the two main characters, I don't want to say was toxic, but it just wasn't. Maybe grown up, maybe mature. They've grown up a lot more since they were first together, and so I enjoy their relationship a lot more as it goes on. If I were just reading about the first part, I would be like, this isn't gonna last. But because it's the second part, I think they've grown a lot more. I really like the side characters. I think the side characters were an important part, because the story wouldn't have been what it was if there weren't good side characters. I think it's just a really interesting premise for a book. I'm going to include this final book even though I read it in March, because I finished reading it before I did my TBR video, so it kind of feels like it's not a March read and it feels more like a February read because it was on my February TBR, so I'm going to include it. If February was a normal number of days, I may have read it. So the final book I read was Electro by Jennifer Saint. This is the author of Ariadne, and it's another Greek myth retelling, this time from the point of view of three women. So there's Electra, the namesake of the book, there's Clytemnestra, her mother, and there is Cassandra, as in the Cassandra cursed by Apollo to tell truths that no one believes. I think this was a really interesting collection of characters. I think Electra and Clytemnestra particularly were interesting in how they deal with anger and how it kind of forces us to look at them, whether we think they are sympathetic characters or whether we don't really agree with their actions. I think that was a really interesting take. But I also felt really sorry for Cassandra, because, you know, no one believes her and she's not really done anything wrong. All she did was say no to the wrong person. Once again, I really enjoyed hearing a woman's point of view of a story that's so often told by the men. So Clytemnestra, Electra and Cassandra all are affected by the Trojan War, and obviously that usually has a male focus, so it was interesting to see how the women were affected in this time, how the mothers, how the daughters, how the princesses that weren't to blame, how they all coped, how they were all affected by that. So I think that was really interesting. This comes out in April. I think you should all probably check it out. So these are all the books I read in February. You know my opinions by now. I'd be interested to know if any of you think the same. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these, or what was your favourite book from February. If you've got a least favourite as well, let me know. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you in another video.